When you start to dig into it, Gorst, as we know it, used to be a collection of smaller communities. These include Head of the Bay, Pleasant Valley, Butler, Zeta, and probably more little pockets that I know nothing about. The history books often talk about Sunny Slope and Minter as part of Gorst, probably because they were neighboring communities, even though no one I know today would consider Sunny Slope part of Gorst. The general borders of Gorst seem to be the rock quarry on the north side of Sinclair Inlet and Ross Point on the south side. You can see the rock quarry from the freeway. It's a giant carved out chunk of the hill. Looks a little like an amphitheater. And Ross Point on the other side is the sharpest turn on your way into Port Orchard if you take Bay Street. Pleasant Valley was settled by white folks in the 1880s, alongside most of the other waterfront settlements of the time, like Bremerton and Sydney. Sydney would become Port Orchard. The Port Blakely Mill established a farm at Head of the Bay, or Pleasant Valley, and it was run by a man called, I kid you not, Gooch. The first family to settle there was, of course, the Gorst family. They arrived in 1888 and they settled on 60 acres near Anderson Hill. In 1889, the Butler family arrived and settled in the northern portion. That area became known as Butler because the family was very welcoming to travelers and the wife was a great cook. Their home became a sort of table-board restaurant for feeding tired travelers. They charged 25 cents for a dinner. It usually consisted of game meat, fresh homemade bread, and vegetables from their own garden. I could get down on that. The Butler family had 5 eligible daughters, and they would be escorted to Port Orchard in a rowboat by their brother to attend dances. If the tide was out, they had to take off their shoes and stockings and lift their clean, starched dresses to walk barefoot in the mud out to the boat before putting their shoes and socks back on. And the Butler family left around 1905, so these girls would have been dressed in fashions somewhere in that 1899 to 1904 range. We are talking voluminous skirts, starched petticoats, and possibly even corsets. Can you imagine prancing around the mud flats of Gorst in a petticoat and a corset? In 1904, Pleasant Valley got its first school. It was a one-room school that was used for religious Sunday school on the weekends. Children walked to school, but there were no official roads, so they would always arrive dirty and generally covered in mud. The school grew and grew, and additions were made to it over the years before a new building was constructed in 1954. Gosh, that's modern. This book is published in 1977, and it doesn't seem to know there isn't a school anymore. There's also a book published in 1961 called History of the 57 Years of Pleasant Valley School. I have not been able to find that one. So there must have been a school at least until the 1960s, possibly. On the business side, there was only a handful of businesses in the area before the 1920s. The Blakely Mill had a farm, like I mentioned earlier. Next came the stone quarry in 1877. And at some point, the Curtis Brickyard. In the 1920s, a Phillips station and a grocery store opened. A proper post office was not established until the 1940s. Before then, mail had to be picked up from Charleston. And the arrival of the post office is what brought about the name Gorst. It was sort of a hot topic at the time. Some people wanted Pleasant Valley to be the official name. It's what they called the school district. People liked it. Some people thought it should be named Butler after the Butler family, and some people thought Gorst after the Gorst family. I'm imagining a sort of like Team Edward, Team Jacob thing going on, but with Butler versus Gorst. I'm gonna guess they didn't keep Pleasant Valley because, oh my god, there are a lot of places in the United States called Pleasant Valley. You can Google it and see for yourself. It makes research a little rough. But in the end, the name Gorst wins. And Gorst in 1977 is described as, quote, a thriving center at the junction of the highways, unquote. It boasts about the antique shops and the mobile home park and the schools and the markets and the churches. You know, a daughter of the Gorst family kept a journal, and she once wrote down this description of her home where she lived. And I want to read it to you. Quote, the light from our big bay window made a pathway over the water. The water was our highway when we rode to town for supplies or to school. Silver salmon, 8 to 10 pounds, abounded just offshore in front of our house. One season I caught 7 with a trawling line. We had a variety of orchard fruit and strawberries. Father brought the trees down from Silverdale. It seemed magic to me how he changed the wilderness to a home. We had fewer than a dozen neighbors around the bay above Ross Point, but they were almost all hospitable. Well, that sounds like a truly pleasant valley to me. Which brings me to my next question. What the fuck happened to Gorst? I guess we're gonna need a part 3. Do you have a question about Bremerton or its history? I want to hear it. You can find the show on social media at Bremelore, or visit the website www.bremelore.wtf. That's right, you heard me. Bremelore.whiskey tango foxtrot to leave me a voice message. I can't wait to hear from you.